希望这个活动能延续下去，成为我们学校的一个传统。
So this is a very great hear some of the insights and ideas of highly knowledgeable and experienced leaders in these fields.
这对于我们在座的各位都是一个很好的机会，去研究这些专业的前线工作者的这关于领域的相对的见解。
And I just want to finish up by saying a very warm welcome to our speakers tonight. Thank you for giving up your weekday night to talk to us this evening. Thank you.
然后非常感谢大家拿出夜晚的时间前来我们的活动。
Thank you all. I'd also like to thank Alan and Lily for generously giving up their time to help organize this. So without Alan and Lily, none of these people would come. So it's their time and knowledge and connections that have allowed this to happen, which is fantastic. I'd like to thank all 4 speakers for giving up their time and coming in. And I'd like to thank the students who have come here for listening attentively and asking thoughtful questions afterwards. So after this, there will be a period of time where the speakers will be on the stage and you can ask any questions you like of them. So now, without me carrying on too much, I'd like to introduce Lily Yu, who will be your student MC host for the night. She will bring the students on and off the stage and introduce them briefly. Thank you, Lily. Lisa Yu, not Lily.
So without further ado, let's welcome our first guest onto the stage, Mr. Allen. Mr. Allen is the managing director and partner at 8 Inc., which is the world's leading user experience design company. 林玉赏先生呢是8创企业的形象策划有限公司的合伙人兼总经理，该公司是世界领先的用户体验设计公司。Now, please welcome Mr. Allen.
Hello, everyone. Let me just get set up for 1 second. Yeah, I'm good. Hello, hello. Okay, they both work. Okay, so like Lily said, thank you. My name is Alan. I was here last year, not in this auditorium, but another one giving a talk. And I don't know if some of you guys heard it before, but today I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. One of the things that they mentioned was that a lot of the students, around your guys' age like to hear, advice about what to do, in terms of career or what path to pursue and stuff like that. So I thought that I would come and give you some advice, but I'm going to warn you guys, the advice I'm about to give might be a little bit controversial. It's something that you probably won't hear from most people, which is why I wanted to tell you. So if you guys have any problems or find offense to any of this, you can email Malcolm McKinsey at Keystone.com, and I think, he'll take care of it. Okay. All right. So quickly, my name is Alan, and I work for a company called 8 Inc. What is 8 Inc? We do something called designing human experiences. And one of the things we're most known for is designing the original concept for the Apple retail store. So this is the Apple store on 5th Avenue, the flagship. We worked with Steve for 13 years, from 1997 to 2010 while he was alive, designing the entire concept for all the Apple retail stores. Our team still is working with San Francisco to this day. Apple in San Francisco. So quickly, that's what we do. We design human experiences. And what does that mean? Just quickly, it means the entire experience. So when you walk into an Apple store, the experience is not just the space. It's not just the interiors. It's the music you hear. It's the way that people interact with you. It's the graphics you see on the wall. That all comes together to become an experience. So that's what we do. We can design the entire experience. And one of the things we learned from working with Steve for 13 years is that design is not just how something looks, right? Design is actually something that can change human progress, that can change emotions. That's why we think it's so important. Before Apple created the Apple Store, before Steve designed the iPhone, people thought that a phone was just a functional thing. A store was just somewhere where you went to buy something. Once you add in that layer of emotion, everything changes, right? We think that that's kind of a milestone change in human progress. So that's what we do. And quickly, how do we think about design is a little bit like this, where we look at the needs of the user first. So who are going to be using our product, right? And then we understand the values of the brand. For example, if we're designing something for Apple, we have to understand what Apple stands for. Apple stands for believing that people can change the world through technology. Once we know that, we can design an entire experience which has the environments, the behavior of the staff, the communications in the space, and the products and services around those values of the brand and around the needs of the people. And, you know, just a few of our clients that we've worked with, we've designed the retail experience for Apple. In China, we've worked with Xiaomi to design their retail experience. We've done the retail experience for Tesla, Xiao Guan Cha, Keep, etc. So Tiffany's as well in New York. So an interesting roster of clients. And globally, we have 11 studios around the world. So US, China, Europe, etc. We have teams in Beijing, Shanghai, and Hong Kong, which I look after. Okay, so commercial time is over. All right, so today, I'm not going to talk about what we do. I'm going to talk about three things. I'm going to talk about my path, how I got here, where I come from, and then my advice, right? And my advice is really through my experiences and things that I've learned from my mentor. My advice for what I would recommend people do when they're just starting out on their career path. And then the last thing is insights into the future, because we work with some of the world's most cutting edge companies. So we have interesting insights into things that are going to be important in the future. So that's what I'm going to be talking about. I've got about 60 slides, and I think I have like 18 minutes left. So let's go. All right. Part one, my path. Quickly, this is me, as per LinkedIn. So I grew up in Southern California in a small beach town in Seal Beach, about 20,000 people, and 10-minute bike ride from the beach. In college, I went to the University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA, and I studied East Asian studies. So I'm telling all of this to you because you'll realize if you look at my resume that I didn't study design, even though I'm a designer, even though we design experiences. I didn't study design, right? You don't have to either. I'm telling you that why is because when I went to UCLA, I actually studied economics. And then I realized I wanted to study in China. And one way of doing that was studying East Asian studies. That meant that I had to study abroad for a year. So what I ended up doing was I ended up going to Peking University, Beida, in Beijing for a year. And it was kind of like a test of whether I could live in China in 2010. And I barely passed, I would say, because back then it was really cold, really polluted, and I was sick all of winter, and I wasn't sure if I was going to come back. So I went back for my last year of college in UCLA, and then was looking for a job and decided that I would come back to UCLA. I was looking for a job and decided I would come back to China. So when I got back to China, I had a choice between two things. I could work for a tech startup doing video on demand, or I could work for a design company called 8 Inc. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I'm pretty sure just like every single one of you right now in this room, you guys have no idea what you want to do, most of you guys, right? So what did I do when I had no idea what I wanted to do? I did this. I decided to work with the smartest, most talented people I could find, which was essentially Tim, our founder and CEO. Tim worked with Steve from 97 to 2010, at least every other week, face-to-face, designing the entire retail experience for Apple. He's one of the smartest guys I know when it comes to design. And I knew that if I didn't know what I wanted to do, I needed to find the smartest people. And I would say it was a pretty good decision. Some of the things that Tim has done, he designed the original Macworlds in 1997, the first Apple store, which you see in the middle, and then the entire Apple flagship, all the way through stores for Tiffany, Nike, Virgin Atlantic, right? And working with him is kind of where I learned to basically help design some award-winning experiences for now what you see in China, for Xiaomi, for Xiao Guan Cha, for Guanzi, etc. So how did I learn to become a designer without actually being a designer? I've got three rules for you guys, all right? My first rule is say yes to everything. When I joined this design company, I didn't learn anything about architecture, anything about graphic design, anything about industrial design. So the only thing I could do was be the helper for all the designers. So anytime they needed help with Photoshop, or if I could, clean up a file or something like that, I would do it, right? Anytime they needed help with a 3D model, I would do it with the glue, right? Because when you're doing something and helping them, you're learning how they think. That's the key, is learning how these people think. If you can do that, then you can learn to do anything. And the other thing was, for 2 years, I worked 7 days a week. On the weekends, I'd come into the office by myself, like this guy, and I would literally read every document that we had ever produced, look at every design that we had ever done. If you just think about it, if you work 2 extra days a week, which is 7 days a week more than the standard 5, you're going to work 28 days a month, 336 days a year. You're going to work 100 days more than that person. You think you can get more done with 100 more days a year? I'm pretty sure you can, right? So my first rule, I would say, is say yes to everything. My second rule, copy, but don't steal. What does that mean? It means that there's a lot to be learned from replicating something. That's how most people learn. You can learn a lot about design, about strategy, about creativity by replicating someone's work, right? You should do it. Understand what makes good design good. Understand what makes great strategy great. Once you've understood the underlying principles behind design, behind strategy, you can go and add your own mark to it and make it relevant to you, right? This is what I did for Lincoln. With Lincoln, when I just started at our company, we designed the entire experience for this dealership. We also did what we called a channel strategy. And a channel strategy is essentially how you decide to put stores throughout Beijing. And what kind of stores? Do you do big dealerships? Do you do small little boutiques and Senlitun? This is called a channel strategy. When they had me do this, I had no idea what to do. So what did I do? I looked at other channel strategies we had done for Citibank, for Ping An Bank, for Ford. And I basically copied it, but added what I thought was relevant to Lincoln, what was relevant to Beijing. And that's how I started. Rule 3 is see as much of the world as humanly possible. So a lot of times, I think especially in China, people will spend a lot of time just studying, right, in the classroom. And that's going to help, but you have to realize that a lot of what you're going to learn is outside of the classroom. And this is pretty relevant. So in 1982 at the Academy of Achievements, where Steve Jobs was receiving an award, he talks about this idea being that the key to innovation is the ability to make connections where other people do not. This idea of having your bag of experiences that you walk around with. If you walk around with the same bag of experiences as everyone else, you're going to make the same connections as everyone else. So what you have to do is go about acquiring different experiences to put in your bag that no one else will have, right? That's your goal. And one of the funny things is, if you're smart, what happens is you end up getting put on this path, and you end up studying a lot in high school, and then going to Stanford, and then becoming an engineer. And you kind of end up going down this path that everyone else has gone down, right? So one idea to think about is maybe go to Paris, be a poet for 2 years, right? Or go to Ethiopia, go to a third world country, see how people live in terrible conditions. Why? Because you'll realize the most innovative people have a huge variety of experiences they can draw on, so that they can come up with creative solutions when they have problems, right, that they have to tackle. So I'll give you an example. This, Xiao Guan Cha, we designed this for our client. They sell tea in little capsules, 50 RMB per capsule, super expensive. Essentially a luxury product. How did we design this entire experience where you can see the tea in this beautiful glass capsule? There's a velvet tray that comes when you pull out. We went to Cartier and we went shopping. And we looked at what that experience was like. And we took what was useful from that experience and applied that to Xiao Guan Cha. What about this? You see that bar in the back? That bar is a Japanese sushi bar. We just changed the materials, right? But look at it. It's a Japanese sushi bar. You sit here, they put the sushi on here, or your tea, and down here, they're cutting the sushi or they're making the tea. Why do we do that? It's because you don't want to show people the sausage being made, right? You only want to show them the beautiful product in the end. So that's why there's three essential levels to this. So they can't see what's being made here. They see the beautiful end product, and they can enjoy it here. What about this? This is a store that we did for Xiaomi recently. Does that remind you of a table that you might have eaten at in a restaurant? Yeah, right? Or this, the Apple store, the Fifth Avenue store. This is essentially Steve Jobs' version of the Louvre in Paris. Right? Yeah. So what I'm saying is, see as much of the world as humanly possible. That's my third rule for how to become a designer. Okay? All right. Now on to part 2. I'm going to keep on blasting through. My advice. You know, I've been fortunate enough to design a ton of projects and create these really cool experiences for a lot of clients in China. And I've had a lot of mentors along the way. So this is kind of an amalgamation of all that, right? So my advice is this, but I'm going to ask you first. Most people, when they come to these talks and they give you career advice, what do they say? Does anyone know? When they speak to young kids about to embark on their journey, what do the most people say? What's the advice they give? Yes. Follow your heart. Or follow your passion, right? What BS? Yeah, I can't cuss. I'm going to say BS. No, listen, following your passion is BS. Why? If someone tells you to follow your passion, it means they're already rich. And you know what? Typically, the guy on stage that told you to follow your passion made his money from coal mining or iron smelting. You think his passion was in coal mining or iron smelting? I'm pretty sure it wasn't. This is what you should do instead. Instead, find something that you're good at, right? That's your job. Find something that you're good at and then apply the grit and hard work to become great at it. Because once you're great at something, the money, the recognition, the relevance from being great at something will make you passionate about whatever you're doing, right? No one's passionate about sales as a service, medical services, or something like that. So instead, think about what things people will pay you to do, what things that don't suck, and something that you might be good at, do that. Here's the problem with believing you should follow your passion, okay? The problem is work is hard. And when you run into obstacles and you face injustice, you'll start thinking, I'm not loving this. This is upsetting and tiring. This must not be my passion. That's not going to work, right? Most of the jobs that you see of people in entertainment and super successful or a singer are the 1% of the 1%, right? Jay-Z followed his passion and became a billionaire. Assume you are not Jay-Z. Okay, so you're ready to find something that you're good at, right? The next question you're going to ask me is, where do I start? Growing up in Southern California, one of my mentors once told me when I was asking him, where should I start? What industry should I work in, right? He told me, imagine that you're paddling out in the ocean, you're surfing, and you want to catch a wave and get back to shore. Find the biggest waves that'll bring you back to shore that you can ride all the way in. So fortunately for me, I was fortunate enough to ride on the waves of China booming over the 2010 to 2020. Tech and consumer retail. We're kind of at the intersection of that with 8 Inc. I was really fortunate enough, and those were my waves that I rode, right? Your job is also to identify what are the 3 to 4 tidal waves of growth that are going to be happening for the next 10 to 15 years. And to be honest with you, You want to massively overinvest your time in your 20s and your 30s so that you can have balance and happiness in your 40s and your 50s, right? The sad truth is that balance is a myth. Balance is when you overinvest your time and your energy in your 20s and 30s, that you can have balance in your 40s and your 50s. Okay, that's my advice. And then the last part is part 3 is insights into the future. So a few ideas that you guys can think about when you're thinking about maybe what I want to do or things that interest me. One is that we're seeing that technology and business models are becoming easier to copy and increasingly commoditized, right? So for example, Douyin and Kuaishou. I'm sure you guys all know what this is. Can anyone identify which one is which? Which one is Kuaishou? This one on the left? Kuaishou is on the left? Okay, you guys are good. I got another one. What about this one? Right is Kuaishou? All right, you guys are better than I thought. Okay. Okay, I got one more. This one. Douyin or Kuaishou? Which one? On the left or right? Kuaishou where? Kuaishou on the right? Okay. All right. You guys win. Kuaishou everywhere. All right. You guys win. Right. But the point is, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between these two. Maybe you guys spend too much time on your phones, but it's pretty hard to tell, at least for someone like me. What about this? Does anyone remember this? Mobike? Where are they now? Huh? What about them? Anyone remember them? Or them? I'm pretty sure you guys don't know this one. What does this look like now, right? Beijing looks like this now. Commoditized. The business model has become commoditized, right? And technology is easy. Anyone can use it. Okay, so commoditization is what? Is emulation equals parity equals commodity. So easy to copy means that parity or everyone is the same. And then what happens is it becomes a commodity, right? Low value. Second idea is that, or second insight is that design and user experience will be tools for innovative companies to differentiate and create irrational loyalty. One example is Apple, obviously. The entire user experience from the phone to the store is incredible, and that's why you choose Apple, right? And you have loyalty to the brand. What about Airbnb? Airbnb is a design-driven company. Everything from the logo, right, to the user experience in the app, to the interface, everything is unique to Airbnb. Somehow when you're in there, you just feel comfortable. You feel like you're having fun. They have their own font. This is how Airbnb differentiates, right? This is why you will choose Airbnb over and over again. So that's one example. And then this is a video here. You can watch it. So what's all that good design for is creating emotional connections. That's why you choose Airbnb over and over and over again. That's why you choose Apple over and over and over again. Design is the means to the outcome, which is emotional connections with your customers. Okay. So last thing, I know I'm running over on time, so I'm going to be quick with this, is I have 3 skills for aspiring designers. If you guys want to look at design as a potential career path for you in the future. One is be a generalist. What does that mean? Is that be Steve and Woz, right? In the future, or even now, the Wozniaks, the engineers, the actual people doing the renderings for you, right? You can hire those people. What you can't hire is the generalist that can connect all the dots together, right? Steve Jobs, when he was in college, he studied calligraphy, right? He studied history. He studied people. He studied technology, and he was able to make those connections and connect the dots. And it was because of all that you see the iPhone, right? You see that experience. So one thing is be a generalist, connect all the dots. That's me. Skill 2 is understand people. What do I mean by that is this. This is the iPod. The iPod is an MP3 player. Before the iPod, there were tons of MP3 players. So why was the iPod so incredible? Is because it focused on what it did for people. Before, when you had MP3 players, it was what? 50 megabytes, 100 megabytes? What does that even mean? I don't even know what that means. Hold on. This is Steve's presentation of the iPod. Is there a sound? Okay. Essentially, the innovation with the iPod was 1,000 songs in your pocket. People can actually understand what that means. Oh, right? Yeah, I know what that means. That's relevant to me. So understand what people want. People don't want 100 megabytes. They want 1,000 songs in your pocket. Last skill, understand business. If you only understand people and understand what looks pretty, you're only going to be able to design pretty things that, are going to be degraded in the future, or eventually, demoed probably. So what you want to do is understand business. If you look at this store, this is the Apple store again on Fifth Avenue. Why does this store work? Is because if you understand design, this store is the purest expression of the brands of Apple, right? Of transparency, of architecture, right? Of technology. This is the purest expression of that. But what about the business aspect? This store cost over $7 million to build. Who would be crazy enough to spend $7 million on a store? Apple. Why? Because Apple, essentially, in 2001, when they started opening stores, it was one of what we call the greatest unlocks in history. An unlock that created over $500 million, I think, in shareholder value. Is essentially what? Opening temple to the brand, Apple stores. Steve Jobs zigged when everyone else was zagging, right? He reallocated billions of dollars from traditional marketing. So instead of TV ads, right, and print ads, he allocated all of that money instead to Apple stores. And what happened is that when you went into the Apple store, the luxury experience of the Apple store is what allows Apple to sell iPhones for the margins of a Ferrari at the volumes of a Toyota. That's why they're so successful, right? So you have to understand how that business model works, why we're able to justify what we do, and then design accordingly, right? Now the stores have become a moat for Apple, where they can occupy the best malls and the best locations in the best malls around the world, where no competitors can ever overtake them. That's the Apple store. Okay, so those are my 3 skills. Be a generalist, understand people, understand business. And my last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is going back to that idea of your bag of experiences. The reason why I'm able to become a designer without actually learning design is because I have a huge bag of experiences from traveling all around the world, right? Seeing all these different things, hanging out with different people. And so I'm able to draw on all these different insights and create tea stores that are inspired by Japanese sushi tables or inspired by Cartier, etc. Right? So when you guys are going out there and living your life, remember to have interesting experiences in your bag of experiences. Okay, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you.
Now let's please welcome Mr. Patrick Rhine up to the stage. Ms. Patrick is Ullens Center for Contemporary Arts Director of Research. Mr. Patrick 是尤伦斯当代艺术中心的研究部总监。Please welcome Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Keystone Academy for inviting me here today to talk about UCCA and what we do as a contemporary art museum in Beijing. First, I just kind of wanted to get a poll of the room. How many of you have visited UCCA before? Just roughly. If we can see some hands. Okay, so a good number of you. I'm really excited to see that. So as some of you will be familiar with, and some of you will kind of be learning a little bit more about what we do today. In my talk tonight, I kind of wanted to connect two things. One is, what does it mean to be working in a contemporary art museum in 2021 in China and in the world at large? And then through that, also look at the state of the art ecology in China today and kind of the situation for what it is to be a museum, to work in a museum. So to start with, I'd like to kind of introduce myself and talk about my path to UCCA. I am American. I'm from Chicago. I studied Chinese and art history double major at Williams College in Massachusetts. I first came to China in 2007 just for a quick trip. It was actually for an internship at a hotel that ended up kind of being illegal, and it was a very messy situation. But I fell in love with China at the time, and especially the cultural community in Beijing in 2007, where it just felt like there was a moment in Chinese contemporary art, music, literature at the time that it felt like this was where the future of those industries would be. I then came back to China in 2008 to study abroad here for a half year. And then after graduation, moved back to Hangzhou first to do a research fellowship at the China Academy of Art in Hangzhou. After which I worked at a contemporary art magazine for about a year and a half, and through that found a role at UCCA in 2013, which I've been at ever since then. I first started at UCCA as our English editor, just kind of responsible for all of the English texts that the museum produced, from press releases to sort of descriptions of products from the store. From there, I went on to start doing our publications, back when the publications fell within the exhibitions department. A lot of our exhibitions, to kind of add a layer of academic depth and also to document the exhibitions, will produce a book afterwards, or during the show ideally, that can sort of be an extra level of sort of scholastic contribution that will be tied to the exhibition. And then in 2018, the museum underwent kind of a restructuring that I'll talk about in more detail a little later. And through that, we decided to kind of pull out publications from the exhibitions department and focus all of our content-related products in one department. So the same team that was researching and writing and editing these books for exhibitions would also be doing our audio guides, our wall text, our artwork descriptions, and kind of create the synergy there for one content-producing department. And we called that the research department, which I am now heading up. So just to kind of go into the history of UCCA a bit, UCCA was first founded in 2007 by Guy and Miriam Ullens, you can see here. UCCA actually originally stood for the Ullens Center for Contemporary Art, but as I mentioned, we kind of had a restructuring back in 2017 in which they sold the museum, so we kind of kept the acronym UCCA, but now it's just the UCCA Center for Contemporary Art, in which UCCA doesn't really stand for anything. They are very interesting figures, though, and quite ahead of their time. Guy Ullens actually had been traveling to Beijing since the mid-1980s, collecting Chinese contemporary art. He had long established ties to the arts community here, and he had put together one of the biggest and most important collections of Chinese contemporary art in the world. So in the mid-2000s, he wanted to find some way to give back to the arts community in Beijing. And he decided that the way to do that would be to create an independent, not-for-profit art space in the heart of Beijing that could feature the best in Chinese contemporary art while also bringing in the most interesting and newest ideas from abroad and give them this sort of international caliber exhibition platform that could also feature public programs, talks, symposiums, to really be a multidisciplinary art center in the center of the city. He scouted locations for some time and eventually settled upon the 798 Art District, which I'm sure a lot of you have been there sort of within the past 5 years or so. Back in the mid-2000s, it was nothing like it was today. Today, it is a tourist destination that you'll find in any guidebook for Beijing anywhere. Back in 2005, it was truly an underground space. It was truly a space that was developed by artists, by these sort of local gallerists, by publishers, by creatives, before sort of the shops, before the commercialization started moving in. And the special thing about the 798 Art District is that it's a series of old factories built in the 1950s. So you have, it's sort of the same story that you see with a lot of arts districts around the world, where you have these industrial districts, there's some sort of shift in the economy or economic policy and the factories close, but all of a sudden you have these giant spaces with lots of room to work in, and that attracts artists who need big, cheap spaces to work. And then that starts to attract galleries, then that attracts cafes, then that attracts shops, and that's just gentrification. But back then it was still a very emerging place. So you can kind of see we have about 2,000 square meters of exhibition space. And this is sort of the rendering of how he wanted to develop it into a museum that would have the facilities to show contemporary art, oftentimes very fragile, sensitive objects, but that could still retain the character of those original factories and the spirit of that sort of down-to-earth manufacture. So we still have the original smokestacks here. The building for UCCA used to be a state-run audiovisual equipment manufacturing plant. They actually made some of the audio equipment that was later installed in Tiananmen Square. But then finally, in 2007, they opened the museum with their very first show called 85 New Wave, The Birth of Chinese Contemporary Art, which was about the sort of first truly contemporary art movement in China, the 85 New Wave. Kind of this moment from, there was earlier arts movements from 1978 onward that were kind of focused more on abstract painting, expressionist painting, but by 85, it had kind of already advanced to a place that was quite in sync with the theories of postmodernism and what was being produced globally. So at UCCA, we typically put on about 12 to 15 exhibitions a year. These are analytics from 2020, which was a quite unusual year, as you might expect, so we didn't do as much as we typically do. But usually we have about 1 million visitors a year. We put on at least 300 public programs a year, and we have sort of a whole host of programming that can meet the needs of not just contemporary art fans, but fans of culture more broadly. And as I mentioned before, in 2017, we had a bit of a restructuring. Guy Ullens decided, he's quite up there in years, and he decided his family, who wasn't as interested in art, might not be the best inheritors of the museum or might not want this giant museum project in China. So he decided to pass on the exhibition, or pass on the museum. And with our restructuring, sorry. So yeah, just let me jump ahead, sorry. So with our restructuring and our new owner, this also gave us a new resources to start expanding the museum around China. So we've built our first branch museum in 2018 called UCCA Dune. Some of you might be familiar with Aranya out in Beidaihe, this sort of luxury or sort of resort community for weekend getaways for a lot of Beijingers. And we worked with them to build this very interesting project space. It's a museum. It's called UCCA Dune because it's a museum built underneath the sand dunes there. So the museum is almost entirely submerged except for these cave mouths that kind of open up into the galleries. And this way, not just was it our first branch museum, but also was sort of a very different sort of space. UCCA Beijing was quite It's sort of your standard museum space. You have the kind of the white walls. We build sort of walls for different exhibitions. But it feels very much like a contemporary art museum. Whereas Dune, it's sort of it's a series of linked chambers that kind of allow you to do more interesting kind of exhibitions. They force you to be more creative with what art you show. You can't really show paintings because all of the walls are curved, so you can't hang anything on the walls. So that allows us to kind of treat it as more like a project space for different sorts of thematic shows for younger artists who might not be right for UCCA Beijing at the time. So like this is an installation view from our previous exhibition at UCCA Dune, Daniel Arshen's Sands of Time, in which he installed these very beautiful sort of reproductions of classical sculptures that are sort of falling apart into these crystals and sort of look like they're emerging from the sand like ruins. And from there, we also, just earlier this year, in May 2021, we opened our third branch museum, UCCA Edge in Shanghai, which is also sort of different from Dune in that, and different from UCCA Beijing in that it's a museum that's integrated into an office building. So sort of a museum that is set in the heart of the kind of commercial districts of Shanghai, unlike UCCA Beijing in 798, which is sort of often, it's sort of its own destination. And this way it can kind of be more integrated into the lives of workers in Shanghai. Apart from this literal expansion of the museum to different cities around China, we've also been growing more ambitious in what we do. Our brief as UCCA Center for Contemporary Art was at first strictly contemporary, roughly defined as post-World War II in most of the world and post-reform and opening in China after 79. But after these new upgrades to our facilities, we started to look towards what we could do now that we have these improved facilities, kind of climate control, and also sort of the human infrastructure of sort of these 10, 15 years of accumulated experience that a lot of other museums and contemporary art museums across China didn't have. So through that, we started to look to unprecedented exhibitions in China. The first being our 2019 show, Picasso, Birth of a Genius. Picasso had smaller scale shows in China before, but this was the most comprehensive Picasso exhibition, the first retrospective for Picasso ever held in China. And then, as you may have heard, we also have on right now, just for a few more weeks, Becoming Andy Warhol, which is also the largest and most comprehensive Warhol exhibition ever held in China. So, thinking about that, another photo of Edge. With the remainder of my time, I kind of wanted to talk about where we are as a museum, where the museum world in China is in general, and what that means for people who might be considering a role working in the arts and working in the museum nonprofit sector in China. And the simple answer is that it's really a golden age, not just for UCCA, but for museums across the country. We are so happy to see that there are lots of different private museums for contemporary art opening up in Beijing, Shanghai, but then also in sort of cities you wouldn't necessarily think of as cultural destinations for contemporary art, like Nanjing, Hangzhou, plenty of different cities. And it's a sign that we sort of at UCCA welcome this competition. It's a sign that the arts in China are growing. There's growing demand, not just from sort of specialists within the community, but from the broader public for what we have to offer. So UCCA is actually quite a large institution. We have 180 employees in total at the moment. So this is just a photo from our recent Dongqiu party. And just a fraction of the employees that we had. So because we are growing so quickly, because we've grown so quickly over the past few years, it's actually created a lot of new roles and a greater diversity of roles in what we do and who we have within our staff. So I'm just going to quickly go through all the different departments at UCCA and especially focus on sort of the non-traditional aspects of what you might not think about when you think about museum work. Because typically, when you think of working in a museum, you think of exhibitions, you think of the curators. And of course, they are the core of what we do. The curators are working with the artists, they are putting together different shows. They're thinking about the ethical questions of who we exhibit, how we show them, what we want to show, what our public is, what we want to provide to them. They're thinking through all of these questions, and that really is the sort of intellectual backbone of everything that we do. But even within the exhibitions department, that is just one kind of role that we have. In truth, there's a whole range of different specialities within that department, from construction experts who know architecture, who know how to build, who can work with the artists to kind of realize how they want to place their works within the space, because every exhibition is different, every exhibition is purpose-built. And artists are also often architects unto themselves. They have a vision for how they know their works are not just static. They know their works are not just images you see on your phone, but they exist in space and have to be placed in space in certain ways. So you have the construction people, you have the design team, and you also have the tech teams as well. UCCA does a wide range of exhibitions, from sort of painting and sculpture, which you see here with our exhibition Rauschenberg in China, to things that verge more on the classical, like these contemporary artworks inspired by classical calligraphy by Xu Bing, to big group exhibitions. We're going to have things from painting to sculpture to video to AR works to VR works. And even, as I mentioned, we're even experimenting with new forms, like an exhibition we had in 2020 called Mirage that was entirely AR pieces that were situated within the museum proper. So because of that, we also have to have a wide range of audiovisual specialists who kind of work with the artists as well to realize those visions and make sure that the works are being displayed at the highest caliber. From there, we have the research department, the group that I head up. And as I mentioned before, we are sort of the content side of those exhibitions. We do the books, we do the audio guides, wall text, artwork descriptions. We're also building a library. This is sort of a mock-up. I probably shouldn't be showing this. But that will hopefully open next year. And we're also in charge of our archives. And then we occasionally do these sort of academic symposia as well. The work often varies depending on the show. Sometimes the show is really authored by a curator where they've developed this idea with this artist for several years. And because of that, they'll end up doing a lot of the writing for the show. But then my department will coordinate the translation, the editing, make sure everything is being produced in time and sent to the manufacturers in time. And then kind of the third part of UCCA's core nonprofit side of things is and programming side of things is our public practice department, who are responsible for all of our public programs. And just like we use our books to add another layer of content on top of the exhibitions that just a pure art show wouldn't necessarily be able to feature, you only have so many walls for text. Our public practice department allows us to think one dimension further into every one of our exhibitions, and especially targeting people who, maybe they're interested in art, but they really prefer music or film screenings or talks from different academics from different fields, sociologists, psychologists, always inspired by the exhibition itself, but kind of given the mandate to expand that thinking for the show one dimension broader. And the range of topics that they cover is mirrored by the range of forms that their programs take, where we have talks and lectures and symposia, but we also have musical performances, music festivals, film screenings, a whole wide range of programs. Also part of the nonprofit side of things at UCCA is the UCCA Foundation, which is also a relatively new department that was created in the restructuring. And they focus on outreach to underserved communities in Beijing and across China, bringing art education to rural schools, to bringing migrant children into UCCA Beijing and offering bespoke tours to them and art activities. We also have our communications department coming from a different side of things. This is sort of in charge of all of our marketing, in charge of all of our press releases, in charge of all of our social media outreach. I believe the biggest team within sort of UCCA proper, excluding kids, which is our art education program, but chiefly responsible for the entire brand of UCCA. Then we have our development department, which is how we make our money and get paid. They work with our sponsors. They work with our patrons. They work with all of the different aspects of trying to make sure that the museum is fiscally sustainable, that we can continue to produce content for years and decades to come. This is a photo from our gala, which we organize every year, sort of the biggest event of the arts calendar each year. We also have UCCA Lab, which is a commercial department that does kind of commercial collaborations with different brands, different companies, bringing our curatorial expertise, our building expertise to these corporate partnerships. So just recently they did an exhibition in Shanghai with Disney about the history of Mickey Mouse. And then we have the store, of course, which is an essential part of every museum, a big part of how we sort of become sustainable as well. And even within the store, there's a lot of different breakdowns between the retail side of things, the product development side of things, these design teams, the IP teams, a wide range of different people working within that group. And then finally, our kids, UCCA Kids, which is our children's education center built within the museum. It's actually one of the first kids education center tied to a contemporary art museum in China. So my time's just about done, but what I really wanted to stress with my talk today is that if you're thinking about going into contemporary art, if you're thinking about going into the museum world, the roles that are there for you and the things that you can do, the expertise that you can bring are across the board. Of the people that I work with at UCCA, I would say only maybe 10% of them have a background in art history. Other people are just curious about art, curious about culture, and then bring their skills from a lot of different fields to bear in that new context. Thank you very much.
Now let's please give a warm welcome to Ms. Chen Lu. Ms. Chen Lu is the Senior Director of the Ecosystem Product Design at Xiaomi. 陈露女士是小米生态链高级设计总监。Let's please welcome Ms. 陈露。
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here and share some of our design with you. Let me introduce myself. I'm Chen Lu. I have a degree from Art Center College of Design in California, and then I major in graphic design. After graduation, I have been working in packaging mostly. So I have been working for packaging over 15 years. And then I joined Xiaomi in 2011. And then I have been in this company for almost 10 years. And now, today I'm going to talk about packaging design. And everyone knows we are facing a crisis about the plastic problems. So what should we do for the future packaging design? Okay, so let me give you a brief review about Xiaomi. How many people know Xiaomi? And how many people have Xiaomi's products? Okay, thank you. Well, Xiaomi was founded about 10 years ago, and we released our first smartphone in August 2011, and then we rapidly get market share in China. Well, we'll not only produce product. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Well, we produce more than 2,000 different kinds of smartphones, smart hardware, and other lifestyle products. Well, you can find a lot of products in this picture. because we not only produce phones, we have a lot of product lines, from phone to electronic scooter, from earphone to screwdriver, which means we produce a lot of packaging every year. I think we produced maybe 100 million per year, because we are the second large phone company in the world. Well, many countries have begun to ban the usage of plastic in packaging. And as electronic products, we need a lot of inner support structures. Those structures usually use a lot of plastic materials, like PET, PP, EPS. So for those products, we have already heard the banning from Europe. And then I think in the beginning of 2018, India already banned all the plastic usage on the packaging. And then from this year, the European limits the usage of the petroleum-based products on packaging. So the plastic problem is a huge challenge for us. So what is Xiaomi packaging looks like? And what is our active to the restrictions? So in the beginning, we have this one is the third generation of our phone. So in the beginning, we already decided we have to make our product and our packaging more sustainable. After we launched a lot of product, and then we decided that the problem we are facing cannot stop our future. And then what we should do is to design the packaging for the future, a sustainable packaging. As a designer, as I said, I already working for packaging for 15 years. And then I can share a small story in the beginning when we do the phone packaging. I remember it was 2012, after we launched the first generation of our phone. And then on the box of the phone, there was one figure print with the wrong numbers. So we have to destroy the whole pack of the packaging. I remember that was 30,000 packagings, which means we cut a lot of trees and we make a lot of waste. So after we analyze what can we do in the sustainable world, we have a 3R. The 3R is reduce, reuse, and recycle. What can we do? Use those three criteria in design. Firstly, we choose reduce and recycle. We call it 2R project. Okay, after you get your new phone, have you ever noticed how many components in the phone packaging? So this is the Xiaomi phone box structure looks like in 2019. This is what we did to reduce the usage of materials. We reduced the inner structure from 6 components to 4 components. This model did not have the charger and the cable in the box. So it has very limited usage of materials. But for most our models, there is a charger and a cable. So we also reduce the whole structure and reduce the components from 6 to 4. This is the first model that reduced the inner structure and materials. And this structure become the DNA of our phone packaging design line. Since then, all our packaging for phone is follow those rules. Reduce the components as much as possible. Okay. Instead of phone, we have a lot of large products like the electronic scooter and the air filter and then the water filter. So what can we do on those large packagings? Those packagings is so heavy. And then Xiaomi's commercial model is most online selling. So all those large and heavy products has to be shipped to our customers by logistic, and then go through all the delivery process. The function of the packaging is to protect the product itself. Here's an example. For the large appliance, most easy way to do is to use the plastic for the interior structures. And then, so we redesign the whole structure, use the corrugated board instead of EPS. EPS, we call it 发泡塑料, which is the foam white trash waste. And then this gives more challenge to the design, because for the plastic, you only need to do is to fold it, make a mold, and then the structure goes well. But for the corrugated board, you have to design how to fold it and how to design the supporting system for the entire inside structure. Okay, some of our products is so heavy, like this water filter. It's about 40 kilogram. And then the function of packaging is very important because we are selling online, and then the packaging has to go through the delivery process. The product should be on perfect conditions. And then we did it. Switch the plastic material to corrugated board. So this is what we did for the large and heavy products. How about the small products, like the earphone, band, or some like the electronic cinema handset? And then we also have a project called One Paper Box, like the name. The box is totally folded by one piece of the paper. This is like traditional structure design for automatic phone dispenser. And the most electronic product packaging like this. For the inner structures, you have to design at least 3 pieces of the component to support the product, to protect the product from vibration. A part of the packaging cost is on the material. So if we could redesign the inner structure, we can reduce the material cost. Finally, we found a way to solve the problem. The design concept is to build a packaging structure that could integrate the inner components with the outside box by using just one piece of paper or corrugated board. So you can see this box is totally from one piece of paper and totally fold. The design point is to know the product structure more deeply, then to deduce an inner structure to be part of the outside structure. As a result, one paper box could reduce the whole packaging cost by using this material, cutting manual labor, and simplify assembling process. And then it does not need extra supporting structure by only require gluing some parts of the box edges. And then for some structures, it doesn't even require glue. Only the collar locks on the edges are needed to sell the box. And then we already tested and applied this new design methodology to different structures and then, different products of various dimensions. And then you can see include hair dryer, Bluetooth speaker, and then soap dispenser. And this dispenser has a liquid container, and then cinema headsets, and which has a glass lens inside. The packaging weight limitation is no more than 100 grams. So it could shoot for the most of the small products. And then the For our products, we could achieve a range cost saving of 10 to 40%. By now, we have launched over 30 products using this new packaging structure. And for our small products, it become a design requirement for designers. When you get a new project, think about, could this product use one paper? Just use one paper box, use one paper to fold the whole packaging. We also get a recognition from the design world. And then we got the Japanese Good Design Award, especially for the Best 100, and Red Dot and IF Award from Germany. For sustainable design, we are still facing a lot of limitation and restriction. And then every day we are fighting with those difficulties, but we see opportunities in them. Each limitation and restrictions are opportunity for innovation. They inspired new design ideas and to create a new approach for the design. As designers, we welcome all the challenges and use creative to solve all the problems and help our products get more and more green. So, as I said, you can see for Xiaomi's project, we are designed from the beginning. And then for the sustainable design, I think the most thing you should think is you really cares about the world. You really cares about the products. And then from the beginning of design, just keep a sustainable in heart. And then during the whole design process, and then keep the whole design process on control. And then think a new approach to solve all the sustainable problems. Let everyone in the world enjoy a better life through innovative technology and also a sustainable environment. That is our vision for design and our products. Thank you.
So now we're going to welcome our last speaker of this evening, which is Mr. Gao Ludi. Mr. Gao Ludi has become one of the country's best-known young contemporary artists. 我们今天晚上的最后一位演讲者是高路迪先生。高路迪先生现在已成为国内最知名的年轻当代艺术家之一。Please welcome.
Okay, this one. Okay. You can do it. Okay. No. The PPT. Okay. Yes, no. Okay, thanks. 好 ，Thank you.不好意思，我不会用这个。
开始。
对，我刚才双击，但它没有开始。OK， 跟我那个不一样。大家好，然后很荣幸刘千里女士邀请我来做这个算是小小的演讲吧。然后我这个主题叫样本，主要是还是给大家展示一下在我的生命中到目前为止的一些样本，然后以及我希望我作为一个样本能帮助同学们或者帮助在座的各位能够有一些对未来的点吧。好，对，这是我相对比较早的一个样本。 这是我6岁的时候画的一张阿凡提，这可能是我在追寻我的所谓为什么我现在是一个继续画画的人的一个原点，因为可能再早的我是找不到这种就是所谓的电子的文件了，啊，然后也特别感谢我的父母能支持我，就是一直这样画画下去，对，就是我希望的是，就是大家能够在这个过程中也能找到自己的最初的那个点，而这个点可能是支持我们一直工作下去的一个动力，原动力。到了后期，就是大概这是左边那一张是我13岁左右画的一张我上学的路边的一个风景。然后右边是我大概16岁左右画的一个我们家门口的保安，对，可能这种绘画的记忆已经让我开始使用这种方式来记录我的一些瞬间，或者对我来说相对我感兴趣的和我觉得非常重要的东西。同时呢，在这个期间我有接触到那个艺术史，特别是这个西方艺术史，这也让我对这个工作有了一个相对系统的，或者说有了更多元的样本的一个认识，然后这也带动我有了更大的一个动力去继续我的绘画，对，所以我觉得可能对于现在这个年龄段的同学来讲，我希望大家可以，如果真的喜欢绘画的话，可以时不时的还继续的去画画，哪怕画的不好，但是这可能对于我们来说，是一个非常重要的事情。然后因为我一直尝试着自己的绘画，所以我没办法在大学就是高3的时候满足算是中国这个所谓的美术高考的这个所谓的应试的教育，这个就我不能完成那样的一个应试的训练。很抱歉，所以我最后上了，就是因为考得不好，所以我最后还是上了我的大学，就是首都师范大学，Capital Normal University，非常 normal 啊，然后所以这个事情其实当我上大学的时候，我突然意识到这个问题，所以我开始给自己规划了一些绘画训练，然后同时我在学校。就在大1的时候，我在学校旁边租了房子，然后开始，就是自己去画画，当然也会完成学校的一些任务，然后以及完成一些所谓的指标，但是可能我会放更多的时间在自己的绘画的这件事情上，然后同时其实它也不是完全自我的一件事情，我还会看很多的。相对的国外的资讯呐，然后或者是中国的一些正在发生的事情，但是在当时，然后很有幸在这样的努力下，我在2011年，就是很有幸被我们的系主任邀请做一个个展，在我们学校的美术馆，首都师范大学美术馆，当时我很兴奋，然后这张照片就是当时其中在美术馆展览的时候的其中的一面墙，但是我没有做展览的经验，所以整个这件事情完全是有点比葫芦画瓢，然后很多事情都是自己做的，比如说海报，画册自己排版，然后去找印刷厂印刷，然后装裱。就是做框子也是自己去找工厂，然后这些事情全是由自己做的。这件事情其实等于锻炼了我的一个执行力，然后同时呢还可以，我就还能保证自己的这个绘画的这个怎么说呢，就是绘画的这个动力吧，然后 然后那个展览做完以后，其实我怎么说呢？因为我其实对这个所谓的艺术家或者艺术这件事情不是那么有一个概念，但是我尝试着把我的创作，当时认为是创作的这些作品，发到那个网上，比如说当时是微博、豆瓣这样的网上，然后会有一些网友跟我交流，然后还有一些是艺术圈就是现在中国艺术圈内的一些朋友有跟我交流，这其实某种程度上鼓励了我，然后同时很有意思的是，我现在合作的画廊是北京的空白空间，他们当时就是在微博上找到我，然后给我发了一个私信，然后问我是否在北京，然后我就告诉他们我正好在北京上大学，然后希望就是他们希望来看我的工作室，那是2012年的冬天，对，然后他们后来我就开始我的一个所谓的毕业创作的一批绘画，这一批绘画就是关于孤独，就是这个名词孤独。然后正好因为他们对我就是这个空白空间对我是有想做我的展览，所以我就把这个展览我们就达成了一个默契，在2013年的5月份做了我的算是第一个这个等于校外的商业的个展，这是当时的就是上楼梯这一对着的地方，然后这批作品呢，是在等于大学毕业大4的时候，大4下半期画的，其实这中间就已经开始等于我在大1、大2、大3的努力，然后或者说我的积攒，作为就是好像刚才我们这个主题就是作为样本，我有了太多的样本，然后通过这样的尝试，最终我找到了一个相对来说相对符合我的个人的这个视觉经验的一个绘画语言，但是这里面还会融杂的一些别的东西，因为当时的不是那么清晰的一个状态，但是我还是尝试着去做，然后最终画了21张作品，然后在空白空间当时展出，是，对，然后这个是大概当时展厅的一个全面的图片，但是这个为什么叫孤独呢？就是因为可能跟我当时，包括我现在其实也认为，一个个体的艺术创作者，其实他某种程度上他要面对的一个最重要的东西就是这个孤独，而这种孤独呢，其实是整个作为个体的创作的一个原动力，所以当时我就把孤独做了一个像那个名词游戏的一个方式，在互联网上，当时用的是Google 去搜索，然后把孤独分成了3个部分，就是中文的孤独，就是中文文字，然后拼音孤独，然后还有 loneliness， 对，然后进行了搜索，然后去抓取了我想要的大概的图片，然后最后就是一共画了21张。然后作为一个项目，然后当时正好也认识空白空间，然后当时做了展览，然后这也是我的大学的毕业创作，然后以及最后的论文也是依附于整个这个项目来写的，对。然后后来因为做了那个展览之后，我就好像不小心掉进了艺术圈子，然后就开始想象有自己的工作室，一开始其实对工作室这件事情是没有概念的，然后就是我开始去寻找，然后最后找到了一个我觉得还不错的工作室，就在咱们这个学校附近啊，然后从2014年使用到现在，对，然后这个是左边是我工作室的大门，右边是我一个绘画痕迹，对，然后这个是 就是这2天的工作室的大概一个场景，因为工作室在使用的时候就会有点乱，所以它每一天可能不太一样啊。大概是一个这样的一个200多平米的一个方盒子，对，然后中间部分可能我会就是画一些可以坐在那里平面的作品，然后剩下的周围都是需要站着的相对尺幅比较大的作品。我从一开始可能不太拒绝，就所谓的这个颜料这个问题，就是我会去购买我能触及到的所有牌子的所有颜料，这可以也是其实这也是一个样本的概念，就等于我有了更多的样本，而且不同牌子的同一名字的颜色，可能在生产过程中会有细微的这个颜色差别，这可以作为就是我绘画中的一个就是更多元的一个尝试。就好像液晶屏在制作的时候就会有冷屏和暖屏这种色差问题。这是刚才我说的那个桌面上，对我画一些小作品的时候，然后以及我使用的不同的颜料和不同质地的一些材料，对。对，然后这是我找了2张我工作室的照片。左侧这个是我从去年开始的一个关于草莓的系列的绘画，而这个绘画的来源是一个，因为疫情下很无聊嘛，然后天天在工作室，然后买了很多草莓，然后所以在吃草莓的同时，我开始有了一个 idea， 这个 idea 就是，我想用这个无聊的结构去开展我对于绘画的研究，因为这个结构本身是重复的、无聊的，但是想用绘画的语言去打破这种就是已经存在的这个东西。这有一个我的小视频，然后是我绘画的小视频，大家可以看。本来是有声音的啊，我也不能配乐，所以。刚才你们也看到了我给大家展示的我的样本，这个样本其实是我的一个生活方式，然后同时我也希望同学们能够在这个过程中，包括上大学之后的过程中，能找到自己的一个生活方式。这个可能是相对非常非常最前提的，而且相对非常重要的一件事情。 然后关于信息和知识，这个对于这个时代来讲，信息是爆炸式的，然后可以在任何的渠道、任何的环境下取得，然后以及知识的多元性，现在也是非常非常的普遍。我相信同学们或者说大家对于就是对于这两个事情已经开始有了自己的判断，然后以及自己的抓取方式。但是我希望大家可能要警惕一下知识和信息带给我们的一些负面的问题。因为我作为一个创作者来讲的话，感知力是我觉得非常非常重要，然后以及不可缺失的一种能力吧。而信息和知识可能某种时候会影响到我们的感知力。就好像我们在房子里看风景一样。其实我们应该站在风景内看风景，就是站在室外来看这个风景。这个其实是我们最能够所谓的与大地和就是这些元素能够对接的一个方式。然后同时呢，在这个过程中呢，找到自我是我相对就是往后排了，就是我觉得找到自我是一个慢慢的过程，然后同时它也不一定有一个终极的答案，就是说现在可能也不一定是一个真正终极的答案，可能在某一个时间吧。然后关于未来其实这也是一开始邀请我来讲座的一个就是希望我谈到的一个点。但是其实对于创作者来讲，未来是可以，如果未来是可以捕捉的话，可能创作这件事情也就停止了。所以可能我觉得最重要的就是未来对于我们来讲可能是不可预期的，然后同时这也是创作的动力。然后对于我可以具体到这个画家这件事情上，就是对于画家来讲，可能未来画家是不可缺少的一个种类，原因就是因为它是一个跟个体有密切关系的一个工作，或者说一个创作者。就是你需要用到你的身体，你需要用到你的眼睛，就是几乎是你所有的这个身体上本来的零部件，对。然后就是大概我的这个演讲就结束了，然后我希望大家能够通过这个我的样本能够对大家有一些帮助，然后也希望你们能够找到自己的样本。谢谢。
So right now, thank you very much. And right now we're going to spend approximately 30 minutes.
By 20 minutes.
Oh, 20 minutes. And you are welcome to ask any questions to all four of our presenters.
So the guests are going to sit here, and then we've got some students. They're going to run around with microphones. So any questions you have, if you make it known, then they will come and talk to you. So we've got about 20 minutes in here where you can ask our guests any questions that you like. Okay, a fascinating diversity of talks that they've given. After this, if you don't want to ask things in such a big audience, then we're going to go next door back into the lobby after about 20 minutes. There is lots of food out there that also needs eating. So please don't run away immediately. Eat the food, but please go and talk to these people personally and ask them questions and make some connections and contacts with these people as well, please. Okay, so over to our guests. Any questions from the audience?
So I have a question for Mr. Allen. So I think you mentioned in your presentation that you spend like 7 days a week on your work, But then I also have this question, like, how do you stay motivated during this process? Like, how do you like always keep your focus on your like long-term goals instead of like always having like always wanting like reliefs and having breaks?
That's a good question. I think that it's different for everyone. You know, everyone kind of has different ways of keeping themselves motivated. I think for me, it was because I was not coming from a design background, but I had to start to learn design. So it was really out of fear. It was really just like I felt a lot of pressure. I felt a lot of fear that I had to learn, you know? So I think in general, putting yourself in new and kind of uncomfortable situations where you think you don't have the tools is actually a really important kind of thing to do because it forces you. Honestly, there's nothing really in the world that you can't learn if you just kind of spend the time doing it. So I think that's kind of how that's what I was motivated by. It was really just not knowing anything about what I was supposed to know about, but I believed that if I spent enough time, I could learn about it.
Cool. Thank you.
I have a question for Mr. Gao. I think it's better for me to ask it in Chinese. 就是高先生，我想问您一下，就您认为在艺术创作中，就是调研对于艺术创作它的意义很重要吗？就是创作前的调研，它和实际上的输出会有非常大的影响吗？还是说它是一个就是可有可无的东西？
我觉得它取决于你的创作方式，就是可能在某种创作方式内，调研是非常非常有用的。但是比如说对于绘画来讲，可能你个体的就是运动，就是你去画画这件事情可能更为重要，就好像一个跳舞的人一样。你必须在那个练舞室去练习你的动作，而只有那个动作可能最终的结果才是在舞台上大家看见的那个样子。画家也是，就是说作为一个绘画来讲，虽然最终的展览可能是在就是美术馆或者是在画廊这样的，但是其实上面的痕迹是作为一个个体留下来的。那这个过程它其实是需要一个时间的，就是可能调研在这件事情上，它只能让你对整体的概念有一个把握。就比如说刚才我说的，就看这个就是艺术史这件事情，你对整体的这个可能世界上的人都在干什么，然后可能他们在干什么，然后以及看艺术资讯这些事情都是这样的，就是你看这个整体环境，但是可能落实到你个人的来讲还是那样的，就是还是就是要去做的。这个可能跟还是那个创作的手段有关系，就是如果你选择的是绘画的话，然后之前蔡元培先生有写过4个字给那个国立美术学院，就是技进乎道，意思就是当技艺达到一个什么阶段的时候，可能你离那个道就更近了。就是这句话可能更能，我觉得更像是这件事情的一个整体的概念。对，当然你要是就是你有需要调研的那个手段的时候，你当然一定要去就是前期的调研。对，但是其实调研这个概念有点太大了，就是可能我可能回答不太好啊，但是大概我意思就是还是跟个体的这个去所谓的做这件事情很重要啊。
谢谢你。
Hi, a quick question. It's for Mr. Patrick. I just wonder, for you have seen so many artists and designers, what kind of idea would you consider as a new idea or a more innovative idea?
Sorry, just to make sure I understand the question. So what kind of idea is considered a new idea, or what's the...
Right, like what do you consider as a new idea? Like how, like something different that you never seen before?
I guess that kind of goes to I mean, a lot of people define art in a lot of different ways, but the way I've always kind of understood it, and especially contemporary art, is that it's this sort of nonstop project or game of trying to create the new. Of course, nothing is sui generis, nothing comes from just sort of springs fully formed from the mind of the artist. It's always in some sort of lineage. There's always a legacy that you can kind of trace it back to, or different inspirations, either direct inspirations or things that can be studied by scholars that sort of influence them throughout their lives. But I think that that is kind of why we have this sort of special role within society of artists, that it's a sort of a group of people that we say, or sort of society gives the task of creating new culture, of trying to imagine objects that do not exist anywhere else within the culture as it has ever been. So it's kind of a paradox. Nothing is ever truly new, but at the same time, we have a whole group of people who are dedicated to trying to achieve that impossibility. So I think that the fun of art kind of lies in that paradox.
Thank you.
So I basically have a question for Ms. Chen. So you basically talk about how you consider like the environmental issues and considerations, for instance, like reducing the packaging, but how are you able to like balance the user experience and the emotions that the users form with, I guess, the product in a sense, with like the environmental considerations?
Well, in the beginning, we designed as a startup company. The user experience is very important for us. As I can remember, because I did at least 10 generations of the phone, I'm still working on it. And then in the beginning, at least 3 generations of our phone were so focused on the out-of-the-box experience. So we analyze all the actions the user use. When you open your box, take out all the phone, take out all the accessories, all the actions you did. And then we design all the components of the box to suitable to match your action. So after that, we get a very clean idea how the open box experience is important for the users. Now, as time passed, we are facing the sustainable issue. So, as I said, for the design, out of the box has a balance between the user experience and the material choice. For best experience, yes, we use at least 3 components for the box. But for sustainable, we must use 4 components. But I think the users understand. It's not begin from us. It's actually begin from Apple. Apple didn't give you the charger and the cable in the box. So the box only have like phone. So after that, the user get the idea, like I can give up some of the experience and I can contribute to the environment. I think this one need to explain to your users why you did this. That's why we after we did all the reduce the material and components, we release the social media and tell all the users why we did it. And then they appreciate, they understand, and they support us. So in the beginning, I was so worried about this, didn't give you charger, didn't give you the cable, and then owning the phone itself, and then just open the box, take out the phone, that's it. And I was so worried in these 3 months. But after we launched, and then we get appreciate from our users, I think that's it. That's fine. I think communication is the most important part for the designer. Design is about the design things, design the activity, design the experience. But also design is about communication. Let the users, your audience, know what you did, why you did it. And then you did for the good, you did for the benefit. I think they totally understand. So for my designers, every time after they designed, I said, you should tell everyone why you did it. So we tell our publications, we tell our, all the social media empowerment why we did it. So yes, for sustainable, we have to give up some of of the outbox experience, even the user experience, but it worth it. So just tell your audience, your customers, why you did it. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hi, I have a question for Mr. Allen and Ms. Chen. And so we had this unit about packaging design. And like in this unit, the first thing we learned is about the trend. So I believe trend must be something very important in design. I wanted to ask, like, how is it different from leading the trend to closely following the trend?
Well, for the design trend, because I'm the jury member for some of the international design competition. So each year we judge for all the applications, all the works from all over the world. You can see very clean. Everybody is doing the same direction. But I think most important is how you do your design. I believe design have a different level. The first one is make it beautiful. Second, make it function. And then the third one is make it like art. And then we have artists here. So each of the art is unique. Each of the art does have the trend influence. So go by the trend is fine, especially for the commercial design. You have to follow it. Sometimes your competitors doing it. If you don't do it, you probably lost the market share. That's so cool. That's so cool, but it's the truth. It's the reality world. But another thing is keep a heart inside of you. You are the best. You are doing the most unique work in the world. Your design is the art. The unique make it do not influence by any trend. And then yourself is the trend. I think it's about the confidential, confidence, sorry.
Yeah, trends are useful for helping you understand what everyone else is doing. But if you're trying to create something unique, then you essentially want to ignore trends, right? We have this idea called beware of best practices. Most times people will tell you to, think of best practices. We say beware of best practices because best practices means you're going to do things the same way, or you're going to design things to look the same as everyone else. So trends are useful in terms of letting you know what everyone else is doing. But if you want to create something different, then what you want to do is kind of beware of trends. That's the way we think of things when we're creating something new.
Oh, hi. So I have a question for Mr. Allen. So under the current situation of our world now, and there's usually two ways in general for our careers. So one way is to meet the general majority of this world, like the audience and community. Another way is to follow our internal thoughts and our interior mind. So which one would you suggest us to follow? Or which one is more sustainable choice?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I say don't follow your passion, you can do your passions, but you don't always have to do only your passions. You can do them on the weekends, but then do what you're good at on the weekdays. All right? You can be a DJ, that's fine, but be a DJ on the weekends, and figure out what you're good at. And you might be good at DJing and then go into that. But a lot of times, people are just blindly following their passions, right? And not figuring out what they're good at. So I would say, be a DJ if you want, but do it on the weekends first.
Oh yeah, I already chose the road of studying art and doing art stuff, and I'm now just currently writing a Chinese essay about the current situation in Chinese art. So I was talking about education and the career, and lastly the audience of the current society. So I'm quite interested in this topic right now, and I just want to ask, so for the majority of the artists, what if they can't chase their dreams? So how should they find a solution to to live in this current society?
Okay. That's a good question. I think we have a very good example of an artist on stage who's kind of living his dream. So I'm not sure if this question is appropriate for me, but if you had to ask me, I would say this, right? Like, find your tribe, you know, especially in Beijing. I think one thing in a big city in China is that you guys are really lucky in that you will almost be able to find anything as long as you look for it. You know, when I was in college and I was studying at Beida, I was so jealous of all the kids like you because they went to international school in Beijing and in Shanghai, and they had friends that went on to live all around the world, in Sao Paulo, in New York, in London, wherever, right? And they eventually, and anytime they went to a city in the world, they would have friends that were living there, and they can go out and have fun and stuff like that, and they would feel at home there. So I would say you are really lucky to be able to live in Beijing, where you can find almost anything. You can find artists of all different kinds, right? So while you're here, do that, because if you end up going to Cornell for college, you're going to be in Ithaca, and there's nothing in Ithaca except for snow, you know? So if I were you, I would take advantage of living in Beijing. You know, there's so much opportunity here. I don't know if I answered your question, but that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've got time for one more question in here,
yeah.
and then we're going to move into the lobby where we can continue talking to our guests and eat. Thank you. So last question in here.
I have a question for Mr. Gao, so I will speak it in Chinese. 就高先生您好，然后我在这儿，我在上面，这里。
Sorry.
你好，就我想问一个关于您的创作习惯的一个问题，就是说，请问您是把艺术创作当做一个工作，比如说几点上班去开始创作，几点下班，还是说去在有灵感的时候才去创作？比如说，写作去做比例，比如说有些作家他们喜欢，比如几点去上班，然后去写作，然后在电脑面前坐几个小时，然后开始强迫自己去寻找灵感，而有些他们会就是有感而发的知识才会去写作，所以请问您是比较喜欢哪一种创作方式呢？
是这样的，我觉得在整体结构上来讲，应该就你刚才举的那两个例子，所谓的有感而发的去创作的，这个应该是一个在不管是在整体结构还是在个体经验上，都是应该是特别现象，就是他应该不是属于他的人生就是这样去创作的。而对于所有的创作者，我相信他们跟所谓的匠人和工人是一样的，就是一定是给自己规划了时间。因为只有这样的话，才能保证工作的效率。就是因为毕竟创作这件事情，它是一个相对很耗时间的事情。原因也简单，就是因为这是个个体的事情，而不是一个公司。就是公司它有不同的部门，这就是可以用不同的员工来解决这个问题。而对于一个个体创作者来讲，可能所有问题都要自己去解决。所以时间很宝贵，就是可能就是你说的那个有灵感才去做，然后没灵感就不去做这件事情，还是我觉得是一个就是非常特殊的现象。或这种事情其实在每一个创作者身上都会有，就是有感一定要去做这件事情。但是我也相信所有的创作者都是会规划好自己的时间，然后保证比如说007对，就是对，是所有时间都在创作上。对，
明白了，谢谢。
谢谢你。
Okay, thank you very much. Well, I'd like to give a big thank you to all the people that helped tonight, the PAC crew, the SMS crew, and our helpers, Lisa. Thank you very much. Of course, massive thank you to our guests who came in and spoke for us all. Okay, so now we've got a little bit of time, maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Just outside here, there is a lot of food that needs eating. So not only are you going to eat, but these guys are going to be outside, available for you to talk to personally, up close and personal. So please take the opportunity and come and talk to them while you can. Thank you very much.